I just wanted to run through a template that I've put together for the Pianobook initiative, which Christian Henson has been talking about on his vlog. So I've kind of taken what Christian showed in his original cycle of fifths sampling technique that he did for the winter piano and built that into a Logic template so that everyone can sort of use it. Definitely looking to see if there's feedback on anything I can do to improve the template and then sort of put it out there. So let's get started. So I'm going to do, let's get into Logic and new from template. And we're going to close this one. So I've got a couple of templates here. I'm going to use the cycle of fifths one. I've also created one as the minor thirds, which I'll talk about shortly. So let's have a look at the template. So the key things that we've got going on in this template, you'll see we've got the tempo, and this has got the tempo map that Christian went through. It's slightly extended in terms of the number of notes, I think. And I've also put in some useful markers through the template just to kind of tell you which note you're going to play on the piano at each point. So just a little reminder as you go through and record. And I've also got a little MIDI sequence as well. So you've got all the notes laid out here in notation form, which again might be a kind of useful way of running through this. And effectively what this looks like as you run it through, as you'll see, I've got this large area down in the bottom showing the labels, and this makes it easy so that if you're recording through the sample, you'll see that whilst it's playing through, it's showing you the note to go, then it goes up back into the tempo, and then you'll see just ahead of when you need to hit the down note, you'll show that it is, you know, playing that particular sample. So let's get this set up and going for a quick run through just to sort of show it in action. So I've got, let's see if we've got the microphone set up here. Let's see. Okay, that's looking reasonable. I'm not using a proper piano for this at the moment. I'm using just at the moment my MIDI keyboard, just to kind of make it easy. So actually what I'm going to do, just to cheat a little bit, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an external MIDI track and copy this cycle of fifths out onto that. Oops. Just because that just saves me having to play in the notes. So just get that set up. Let's check this plays. Okay, that's good. Excellent. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is just with a bit of a cheat, I'm going to just start the recording, and let's put this on the track here, the piano track. So this is ready to go. And let's just give that going. What we've got here is a bit of a silence at the beginning. That's going to be useful when we do the noise reduction. So here we go. All right, so that's that recorded. I'm going to get this out of the way now just for the next bit. So we're going to go through and cut this up. So I found a couple of little tricks. I'm sure there are probably more. So the first one is key commands, right? So what we want to do is edit this up into splices. And the handy little tip that I found is if you look for transient, you'll see there's rewind and forward by transient, and this will actually jump the playhead to wherever it finds the next transient. And in this case, this was actually default for me, but you may have to set it up or set it up to your own key commands. It's control and full stop. So let me just show the impact of that. So you can see control full stop. You see that is finding that transient. And the other little key command that is going to be handy for us in case you don't have it to mind is the split function. So we're going to want to split at playhead, which is in this case command T. So we're going to do a control full stop and a command T, that's doing the cut. And then what I've found is I have to then skip out. If I do control full stop again, it doesn't seem to do what I need it to do. So I'm just doing full stop, which jumps at a bar. And then I'm going to do control full stop and then T. So that's sort of little workflow becomes full stop, control full stop, T, full stop, control full stop, T. Now I could be just doing the full stop all the way through, and I could just jump 2 bars at a time. And if my playing was absolutely accurate, which in this case it will be because I've cheated a little bit, but if I was just playing this out, I'm not going to necessarily be exactly on the downbeat, and so looking for the transient gives me a sort of a more effective way of doing this. So let's just do that again. So it's full stop, control full stop, Alt T, full stop, control full stop, Alt T. So I'm just going to go and finish doing that. Okay, so that's got all of those guys done, and this is, I mean, obviously you can go in and you could use the split tool, and you could use the scissors tool, and you could do this other ways. I just find, especially if you're going to do a lot of these, key commands are your friend. If you're going to do a big batch of them, particularly more than doing a cycle of fifths, it really will get painful. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just select the track so that I grab all of these audio files. I'm going to shorten them all a little bit so they're not bumping right up to the end. And then also I'm going to drag them forwards a little bit, so it's probably easier to see that. Go here, and that just gives it that little bit of air at the front, which we see Christian doing in his videos, and I think is a general technique that Spitfire do. So I'm just going to also drag this guy a little bit shorter. He's fairly long. So then the other little tip that I have found is in terms of renaming these, renaming all these files, because we're going to want to name them nicely. Now, there are definitely a few ways to do this. One way you could do is just come here and pick the text tool, and then you can just tap and do this. Just type in the notes. And the handy thing here is, again, these markers are now sort of, it makes it no-brainer as you're going through what the note it is that you're going to label all these things to be. So that's very, very helpful. So you can use that way. But the other technique, again, if you're going to do a big batch of this using a key command. So again, if you're not familiar with the key commands, we've got the rename, and we want to do a rename region, which is, in my case, Shift N, which is probably the default, again, for most new Logic installs. So Shift N, and then I can just look above, I can see it's D1. In fact, putting caps lock on also makes my life a little bit faster. So caps lock here, and then again Shift N, and then we're going for an A1. And again, if you sort of then do tab, arrow forward, Shift N, E2, tab, arrow, Shift N, and you can get yourself into a little kind of like tab workflows just to get you through. So I'm going to just finish doing all of those. Right, that's all those labeled up, and this first bit here, I'm just going to come back and rename that. That's going to be my silence, which I can use for my noise reduction. So I've got all of those now nicely labeled up. Right, and then I'm selecting the track. I'm going to do a export audio files. And let's see where we put this in my Logic files, Pianobook experiments. I'm going to create a little folder here. This is going to be FP80V3. This is my Roland FP 80 piano that I'm using. And what I'm doing at the moment is I'm creating an originals folder, so that then when I do the noise reduction, I'll create an NR folder. And I've got mine set up with a custom, which is I'm just using the name of my instrument, the particular piano I want to call it, and then the region name. Now, I found some strange behavior in ESX with when I load these into the sampler. If I try to use 32-bit or even 24-bit, I'm not sure why, but I'm just finding that when I try to load them in, they load in fine, but I can't view the waveforms, and when you're then trying to do the editing, that becomes a bit of a pain. So I'm going to do 16-bit wave file, and I'm going to hit export, and we have now all our lovely files ready to load up into the sampler. Let's just do that now. So I'm just going to create another new track, and let's load up our favorite. Where have we gone? The sampler. Load that up, and we're going to go hit edit. So again, here we are going to be loading multiple samples here, and let's see. Okay, that's great. That's what we just did. So I'm going to add all of these except for the silence. Don't want to add that. That's not going to help us. And we are doing the auto map here. And there we go. We've got these all loaded in. And then again, just in terms of the editing process here, if I click here and then do Command A, that selects all of them. And then we're going to drag this down to the recorded note so that we're not pitching up, we're only pitching down. And then I just press shift and click this guy, so I get rid of the front one, and then I drag everything back down this way. I can then obviously choose to change the bottom of this. It's going to sound rather odd if I stretch that down a long way, so if I maybe just put it down to the A there, and similarly on the end, this sample I probably don't want it to play a very long way up, so I might sort of drag that down a little bit as well. And so that's it. That's in terms of like getting that working. And then obviously it's a matter of loading up the waveform. So you can do that by double clicking here, or you can do it by double clicking actually on the little segment there, and then you can see I need to drag forward the region. So I just grab here the region, hit it up to where it is sensible. Okay, so just ahead, let's actually make a little bit more space. Does that look good? Maybe a little bit forward, a bit more, and then close that. Now I found you get lucky or you don't get lucky on whether this works for all of them. So we can do the view show samples, and you can see where it's done the sample start. So 11797 in my case. Sometimes I can just apply that to all. Certainly if I've used the transient selection, that does seem to do a reasonable job. So 11797, and then that will sort of, so if we just pick something that I didn't look at earlier, so maybe the this guy down here, it's done a reasonable job of lining that up. But obviously it's worth going through and looking at each of these waveforms and seeing if you are you're starting where you want to in the thing. You might if you start a bit early, you're going to find you push the key down and it sort of seems a bit sluggish, or if you start a bit late, you'll probably find you're going to get some clipping or some other kind of weird artifacts as you play the notes. And so that is that there, and let's just see how that sounds now.